Hi, my name's Lee Matthews and I'm a physiotherapist, and I work here in the pain management team at Queen's Hospital. I wanted to take some time to go through some stretches that you might consider doing at home if you spend a long part of your day stuck in one position. We know from a recent trust survey done of the staff that work here that a large proportion of staff reported in the last 12 months that they've experienced more musculoskeletal aches and pains. So that's things like back pain and neck pain. And that's due to a lot of different reasons. During the pandemic, many staff have been redeployed, working in different roles, and often we've been stuck in one position a lot more. You might be working from a computer all day long. It might even be that you've been working from home on a laptop in a setup that's not particularly ideal for the situation. Or it could be that you've been working longer shifts and standing. We know that with all of those things, that when we're stuck in one position, sometimes it can lead to increased aches and pains. I wanted to go through some gentle stretches that you might consider doing at home, and that can help with things like muscle tension and joint stiffness. And with all of those stretches, I want you to make sure that as you do them in a gentle, relaxed fashion. So when I stretch, you'll notice that I don't bounce, I hold and sustain that stretch at the end of range, and I'm aiming to maintain that for about 10 seconds and do 2 on each side. So if you get pops and creaks, that's fine. Joint stiffness can sometimes lead to pops and creaks when we do movements to the end of range. But if you notice any sharp pains, or if you notice that you're causing discomfort that persists for longer than half an hour after doing the stretch, then it might be that you adapt how you're doing them, or it might be you're trying a little bit too hard or straining as you do the stretch. So work at your own level of ability and go in a gentle pace. And whilst I'm aiming to do them 10 seconds, 2 in a row, if you're in a hurry, it's better to do some stretching than none at all. So our first stretch is going to be one of rotation for the neck and the upper body. So you'll need to sit forward slightly in your chair so you've got a gap between you and the back of the chair. And I want you to take your hand and pop it onto the outside of the opposite thigh. The other hand can either hold onto the armrest of the chair or the side of the chair. And what we're going to do, we sit up nice and tall, take a big breath in, and I'm going to look over one shoulder. And once I've done that, apply some pressure on the outside of my thigh, so I'm twisting from the upper back as well. I hold and maintain that stretch for 10 seconds, and then I come back to the start position. And then let's do the same to the other side. So again, I take my hand, pop it on the outside of the opposite thigh, I'm going to reach for the armrest here, I sit up nice and tall, and then twisting around, and we hold 10 seconds, and then back to the start position. Let's do that again on each side, shall we? So again, and again. There we go, so that was our first stretch, which was rotation. For the next stretch, we're going to do one where we curl up into a ball and then we poke our chest out. So the easier option would be hands on your knees and then curling up into a really tight ball there. Hold for a few seconds. So my chin is touching my chest. And then poking my chest out, trying to pinch my shoulder blades together, and arching my back like a sergeant major. And you could either do that one again, or the slightly harder version would be to do it with your hands resting on the top of your head. So here we go. And then, like a sunbather on a beach, stretching those shoulders nice and wide, poking your chest out, and arching your back like a sergeant major on parade. And then relax. So for the next stretch, we're going to do one for the shoulder. There's 2 variations again. The easier version would be bringing your hands out behind you, interlacing the fingers, and trying to bring those hands as far away from your waist as you can, and then relax. The slightly harder version of it would be to try and turn those palms so they're facing away from you as you hold the same position. So again, we hold and sustain that, really stretching the chest, stretching those shoulders, and then relax. And again, that's the perfect opposite of hunching over the computer there. And we're going to keep our focus on the wrist and the shoulder for the next stretch. If I bring my hand out in front of me and bring the fingertips down to the floor, that's a stretch for the wrist extensors. And now if I bring my arm across my chest and apply a gentle stretch on there, that's also going to stretch my triceps. So again, we'll hold this position for about 10 seconds. And then do the same on the other side. So again, bring your arm out in front of you, bring those fingertips down towards the floor, and then if you bring that arm across your chest and apply a gentle pressure there, this is a stretch for your triceps and the wrist extensors. And then the same again on the other side. So fingertips to floor, arm across you, nice gentle stretch there. And the same again, so I bring my arm out in front of me, and again, give it a nice hug towards you. And then relax. Well, the last stretch we're going to do in seated is for the lower back and the gluteal area. What I want you to try and do for me, the easier version will be to just gently hug your knee up towards your chest. So if you had anything like a hip replacement, that's going to be a bit more restricted there. But if you feel comfortable to, you can either have your hands underneath your thigh or on top of the shin there. Again, if you've got a bad knee, you might just prefer to hold onto the thigh there. So that's the easier version. It's a nice gluteal stretch there. And then the same on the other side. If we wanted to add in a stretch which involves a muscle called piriformis, then what we can do is we cross our leg up over the other side there. So as I hug that knee up towards me, I'm bringing it now, so there's a bit of a pressure towards my shoulder. I could even add on to that stretch by rotating my shoulder towards the knee, leaning forward slightly. And again, I'm going to hold that stretch for 10 seconds. And down. You might have just stuck with the simple knee hug one, and then same on the other side. So again, either just hugging the knee up there, or you could even bring your ankle over the opposite knee. So my knee's nice and high here, and then I'm going to bend forwards, rotating my shoulder towards the opposite knee, and I hold and sustain that for 10 seconds. So for the first of our stretches in standing, we're going to do a stretch for the muscle on the back of the thigh called our hamstring. So bring yourself so you're stood next to something for some support if you need it. My feet are about hip width apart, and the leg I'm going to stretch now, I'm going to stride forwards one shoe length, keeping that front knee nice and straight, keeping my back nice and straight. I'm going to bow forwards from the hip. And you can either have the toes pointing up towards you for a slightly more intense stretch, or you can keep that foot flat on the floor. And again, we hold and sustain this position for about 10 seconds. And then the same on the other side. So again, I stride one foot, so it's about one shoe length in front of me. I'm going to keep my front leg nice and straight. The back leg ends up bending just a small amount. I keep my back straight and I poke my bottom out, and I'm holding and sustaining this for about 10 seconds. And we've recorded this in seated in other videos as well. What I'll make sure is at the end of today's video that I put links to other bits and pieces we've done that might be of use. And again, the same on the other side. So I stride forwards, that front leg nice and straight. You can bring those toes up to the ceiling. And then one last time on the other side. So again, poking your bottom out. And relax. Well, for the last of our stretches in standing, we're going to do one to target the front of the thigh this time. It's for the hip flexor and the quadriceps. The ways we can go about that in standing are either with having a chair behind you and holding onto your desk, and if you bring your foot so it's supported by the chair, my knees are together, I'm going to keep my bottom tucked underneath me, and what I'm not going to do is poke my chest out with them. So I keep my back nice and straight, keep your bottom tucked underneath you, and you should start to feel a stretch on the front of your thigh. If you don't, you can intensify the stretch by bringing that leg further away from you that's resting on the chair. The other way you could go about this in standing would be to either have a scarf or a towel around your ankle to hold onto your trouser leg, or even if you've got flexibility sufficiently enough, you could even hold on to the ankle itself. So again, I keep my bottom tucked underneath me, my knees are in line with each other, and I hold and sustain this for 10 seconds. And again, I'm holding onto the desk here so I don't fall over. And then whichever of those stretches you've done, do the same on the other side. And again, there are options to do this in both seated and in laying as well. And again, if you follow some of the links at the end of today's video, you'll find those. There we go. So hopefully those stretches were useful. And alongside that, remember that if you do sit down for long periods of your day, if you're stuck in one position standing, seated, or doing a repetitive task, try and take regular breaks. And even if you just stand up and modify your position every 30 minutes before you sit down and continue, that can still be helpful. And if you are in seated, remember that slouching with a poking chin does put more stress and strain on things. So if you can find a good position of posture, things like finding that nice neutral position with your pelvis, that lengthening of the spine and those wide collarbones, that can also reduce undue stress and strain on parts of your neck and back. If you were interested in finding out more about those things, I have recorded Pilates sessions in seated and in standing where I go through them in a bit more detail alongside doing some gentle exercise. And don't forget about work-life balance. Lots of your jobs will be stressful, it might involve long hours. If it's quite sedentary, like sitting in front of a computer, try and make sure that in your week you make time to do some form of gentle exercise. It might be a case of just going for a walk in your lunch break. It might be going for a walk or doing some gentle exercise at your local leisure centre. But whatever you choose to do, make sure it's something you enjoy, that it's something that's cheap, convenient, accessible, and hopefully something with a social context to it as well. So hopefully those things were of help. Thanks for watching and see you soon.